Dear shareholders, back in September 2022, Patagonia made the radical decision to give away the entire company to combat climate change. The move was announced on their website under the evocative heading, "Earth is now our only shareholder." So what does this actually mean, and what can we expect from Patagonia as a company moving forward? Is this an example of a company that's actually being a progressive force in the environmental sustainability realm? Or is this just another example of corporate greenwashing? Let's talk about it. So to better appreciate the significance of what Patagonia has just done here, it's important to look at the decision not as an isolated business case, but more so as a larger standing story tying back all the way throughout the company's history. So to start out with, Patagonia is an American outdoors company founded by Yvon Chouinard in 1973. And the company had its start when Chouinard recognized that he could hand cast, forge, and sell these steel pitons to his fellow climbers. And what this piece of equipment allows you to do is you hammer it into the rock face and clip into as you ascend. The problem with steel pitons, however, is that over time they would degrade the rock face, meaning that there was concerns that accessibility to these climbing sites would not be for certain if they continued along this path. And what he decided to do was partner with a fellow climber named Tom Frost, and together they introduced a new product onto the marketplace. And they called them hexcentrics, but essentially you would clip them onto you the same way that you would with a steel piton, but you would actually wedge them into the rock face instead, meaning that you wouldn't leave the trace of what you were actually doing there at the end when you take them out. So this was a form of clean climbing that they introduced to the community, and it had the start of introducing this concept of take nothing but photographs, leave nothing but footprints type of ethos that would really start to define the company from its very origins. So Patagonia made its way into clothing when Chouinard noticed the next gap in the marketplace, being durable climbing attire. And what he did was actually draw inspiration from British workman's corduroy to develop the design for pants, as well as rugby shirts to complement them. And taken together, it starts to expand into what you might associate Patagonia with today, being their clothing lineup consisting of everything from hats to jackets to backpacks to swimwear and everything in between. What you might not know about, however, is that in 2012, Patagonia launched Patagonia Provisions, a food service that sells seafood, soups, and suds. Yes, they sell beer, and taken together, the company is worth $3 billion today. So what does climbing gear, clothing, and food all have in common? It's a question that Patagonia has been asked multiple times throughout its lifespan, and I think it's easiest to understand their approach to this decision-making process in reference to their foundational philosophies, all of which tie back to the question, are we being an environmentally sustainable and socially responsible company? It's this question that drove them to move into Patagonia Provisions, when they recognized that industrial agriculture is an environmental problem, and that when you go to a grocery store, the declining nutritional value of fruits and vegetables is an environmental issue that they should be involved in. Patagonia is also a leader in corporate social responsibility, and this has been true from its very inception, but made abundantly clear when in 1986 they introduced the first self-imposed tax for doing business on the planet. And what they did was take 10% of their pre-tax profits, or 1% of their total sales, whichever figure is higher each year, and donate that amount to a local grassroots organization affecting climate change in their community. Patagonia is also a certified B Corp, or benefit corporation. And overall, there's very few companies of Patagonia's size and influence doing what this company is doing. Let's talk about Patagonia's business structure. So Patagonia is a private, closely held corporation, meaning that decision-making is centralized in the hands of a select few individuals, mostly consisting of the owners of the company, as well as top management. And what they do is strategically direct the company towards their vision for long-term growth without the undue influence of external shareholders if they were a public company, and any other stakeholders who might want to exert their influence on the company's direction or its overall strategy. What Chouinard did when he gave away the company to combat climate change was split Patagonia into two distinct but separate entities. First, we have the Holdfast Collective, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to fighting climate change. To them go 100% of the company's non-voting stock. They also get 100% of the company's profits, with the asterisk that each year the company takes its profits that it generates, reinvests it back into Patagonia as a business to pursue whatever growth opportunities it wants to, the remainder gets sent over to the Holdfast collective, and this amount is projected to be worth around $100 million annually. Second, 100% of Patagonia's voting stock, worth around 2% of the company or $60 million, is dedicated to the Patagonia Purpose Trust, an entity driven by Chouinard, his family, and close acquaintances. And based on this, they will be setting the strategic direction of the company and control its charter, meaning that they will set the path and course for the company to follow, Patagonia that is. And so long as there isn't any turbulence down the road with regards to the company and its strategic direction, its raison d'etre, then you can reasonably expect Patagonia to continue along its present trajectory. So at this point, you might be asking yourself, well, Patagonia seems to be head and shoulders above the rest of the competition here. They seem to have a pretty clean environmental and social responsible history. What's the catch? And I want to start this section off by talking about the environment, because ultimately Patagonia markets itself pretty heavily as an environmentally responsible company. But let's be crystal clear about one single fact. Patagonia is not a sustainable company. Yvon Chouinard admits it himself, as has the chairman of the board of the company, who in his most recent interview admitted, "We don't actually say that we're sustainable. We're not." Despite this fact, many products listed on their website are labeled as sustainable, even though the company as a whole is not. Maybe you consider this a form of light greenwashing, but just because the bar is so low when it comes to industrial agriculture and fast fashion doesn't mean that we should give Patagonia a pass. Patagonia also doesn't have a spotless human rights record, and in 2011 it was discovered that modern slavery was uncovered in their supply chain. The process being that immigrants moving to Taiwan looking for jobs where one of these Patagonia production facilities were, would pay an intermediary broker to land them a job. And once they were in that position, they would in essence become indentured laborers until that debt was repaid, oftentimes taking multiple years off of these people's lives. Patagonia is also a United States Special Operations Forces military contractor through its subsidiary brand Lost Arrow, and today the brand continues under the broader holding company of Patagonia Works, which also includes the clothing company. But the problem with this relationship is that it so clearly contradicts everything about Chouinard, his personal and political beliefs. And just to paint you a picture, this is direct quotes from his experiences as a draftee in the military in the United States from 1962 to 1964. A few weeks later, I was called up for the draft. I tried to fail the physical by drinking a big bottle of soy sauce in order to raise my blood pressure, but I got so sick I couldn't keep it down. And then this is where he moves over to Korea. I caused nothing but trouble by forgetting to salute officers, looking slovenly, going on hunger strikes, and generally acting unbalanced, but always backing off just shy of risking court-martial. Maybe you look at the situation and you think to yourself, well, Patagonia is not really acting out of line here. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's a natural business relationship to have between an outdoors company and police forces or militaries. I mean, they're a natural customer for your product, so it's a prudent business decision. Moreover, you'd rather, because the military needs its gear anyways, have them source their materials from Patagonia, and their environmental social record will be better off for the company, for the planet, than it would be if they used another competitor. I've heard that argument multiple times, but I have to stress that I don't see that as fair, because this is a matter of values. And for a company that is so fundamentally built on values like Patagonia is, for their founder to say one thing and for the company to do something in the exact opposite direction is a deterioration of the trust that ultimately consumers can place in the company. Because let's be honest, when you go into a Patagonia store, you're not going in for a deal, you're going in because you care about the same environmental and social things that the company purports to care about. So how does Patagonia actually decide what causes they want to support? If you ask Chouinard this question, he would probably direct you to the company's philosophies as the starting point for how these decisions are made. But I think there's a good example from his autobiography that really paints a picture about how this process occurs. So there's a situation where he's in conversation with an employee, and the employee is asking him, well, Chouinard, as a company, why is Patagonia spending so much money donating to Planned Parenthood when there's so many other social issues that we could be making a legitimate difference in the world if we decided to pursue those opportunities? And Chouinard in response said, well, when you think about it, overpopulation is an environmental issue. And the fact that the planet simply doesn't have enough resources for the number of people expected to be onboarded onto this planet over the next few years, over the next few generations, this is an environmental issue and therefore within our mandate to affect. So it all boils down to the environment, which is all well and good. I mean, it's kind of what you expect from Patagonia, and I think that's a good thing when you think about the consistency that you can expect from the company. But then you get to 2021, when Patagonia donated $1 million to the Black Voters Matter Fund in Georgia in the United States. And don't get me wrong, I'm supportive of this decision on a personal level, but from a business standpoint, what business do they have donating to this cause when it doesn't have a clear link to the environment, insofar as I'm not aware that all Black voters are voting for the environment when they go into the ballot box? And in response to this, when they made the donation, Patagonia actually stated that they're moving a little bit into the intersectional nature of the environment. And I have to agree, I mean, nothing that we do is apolitical, and they're acknowledging that. But without that clear strategy and clear delineation about what is appropriate and what is not appropriate with the resources they're using and how it ultimately supports the causes that they care about, I think they still have work to do in communicating that strategy to the broader public. The last concern that I want to mention is that it's been 10 months since the company has restructured its business. And in that time, we've yet to see any public documentation, be it reports, be it a public-facing website, talking about either the Holdfast Collective or the Patagonia Purpose Trust. And without this information, without that transparency, it's hard to take a company at its face value. And I understand that they're a private company. We are not entitled to that information. But as a company that is so forthright about its social responsibility and its environmental responsibility, to not have this information publicly available is a shortcoming. And I have to say that if they want to improve their stakeholder relationships, mainly the people who go into Patagonia stores and purchase their products, then having this information available sooner rather than later would make a world of difference to know that when you go into a Patagonia store, you're actually supporting the causes that the company says they're supporting. My name is CJ, and this has been my report to you, the shareholders, live from Treaty 7 territory, Mohkinstsis, Calgary, Alberta. Thanks so much for your time, and I hope to see you in the next video, but until then, take care, and we'll see you in the next one.